Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson. Always a delight to have Dr. Klein with us today. He's here from Ventana Wellness. And by the way, if you want to join the conversation, he's with us for a couple of segments. You're welcome to do that. The phone number is 541-776-5368. Ask the doc. 541-776-5368 or toll free 1-800-373-5368. We're going to talk about cancer screening today, and this is really something. So what is it? What are all the various types?
So usually I'm, as always, I'm the fly in the ointment, wanting people to think about, there are more controversies around cancer screening. So typically we're thinking about, what I want to really more talk about are the controversies in it. But, for breast, colon, prostate, cervical cancer, so it's pap smears, it's colonoscopies, it's PSA testing, mammograms, and those kind of things, and how much good they really do, depending on who you talk to. The main thing is the model that's been used for the past 150 years is that, okay, cancer, if it develops, will need to grow to a certain size before it breaks out into either the bloodstream or the lymphatic system. And if we can catch it before it breaks out, that's obviously the prevention of the disease that kills people. People don't die of the actual tumor, they die of it spreading through the body. Mm. So the whole point was, can we catch it? And this was thought to be pretty universal. It turns out that for some tumors, it does not work as well that way. Colon cancer seems to be one that we still, the risks don't outweigh the benefits that we get from that. Cervical cancer pap smears are universally hailed. They make a difference. But more and more recently, both prostate and breast cancer screening have come under question, particularly by what's an independent board of preventive medicine specialists called the United States Preventative Services Task Force. And people may not know about this group, but this is the group that is assigned with making recommendations on all the things that can be construed as preventative services, preventative medicine, based on strictly the studies, the data that we have right now of what do the studies show. They're really doing this evidence-based. Are we really making a difference? And that's where things start to become more controversial.
Wow. So what you're thinking on that, I mean, are we making a difference with this stuff?
Depends on which cancer.
Okay.
So this is the problem. And I know it unfortunately, like one patient a long time ago, this was, 15, 16 years ago, I was having this conversation with a patient about the questions about prostate cancer. And he well, I just thought you get this test, it tells you if you have cancer and you get it treated and that's it. It says, right. Well, it turns out it's not quite that easy. With prostate and breast cancer, we're dealing with situations, and most cancers, but the behavior of the tumor will depend on which genetic mutations the tumor has. And this is more research that's been over the past few decades. Tumors with certain mutations will never cause the person a problem to begin with. Mm-hmm. They were not going to die from that tumor. So treating those tumors may very well be unnecessary, even though nobody feels comfortable doing nothing about cancer, because there's, of course, this general fear about it that what the data is showing may or may not be justified. Tumors with the bad acting mutations, by the time we even find them on the current screening exams, may have already broken out. Mm. So you have a question of, are we really doing people good? And when they really look at the data, it's questionable. In fact, we can start with the PSA, because this has been very controversial. Right. The prostate-specific antigen testing. The committee currently came out with a recommendation completely against doing it altogether.
The PSA test? Not
doing a PSA. They felt that, number one, at best, we're saving one life for every 1,000 tests done. But for that, every one life saved, you're going to have 30 to 40 men who are permanently impotent and incontinent from the treatment of the prostate cancer, 2 who will die of a heart attack from treatment of the prostate cancer, and 1 who will die of a blood clot. So for every life saved, you're either losing or certainly decreasing the quality significantly of 40-some lives. Mm. And their opinion at this time is that that's not a reasonable benefit. Now we can argue, because then they're dispassionately looking at the data. Right. But I want people to know that this is just not as cut and dried as sometimes it has been presented, certainly in the media at times.
Let me just say to our viewers and listeners, you want to join us, 541-776-5368 or toll free 1-800-373-5368. We're talking about the various cancer screening tests and things. You know, back to the PSA just for a moment. PSA can go up and down, right?
Can.
Because I've heard of gentlemen who got the PSA test, overreacted, and went through all this treatment, and it turned out it wasn't necessary.
Right.
You know, and I'm going...
Well, this is the whole thing about screening tests. What they look at is how sensitive is the test, meaning of people that have the tumor, what percentage of them is it going to be picked up? But even probably more importantly in this case is what's called specificity. How specific is the test? So for people who don't have a tumor, what percentage of the tests are going to be negative? And that's where you get into more problems. PSA can go up from a prostate infection, from low-grade inflammation, just from benign enlargement of the prostate. And there's this huge overlap area. So it's felt that a PSA below 4 is normal. A PSA above 10 has a much higher risk of cancer. You have this whole gray area between 4 and 10 where it's not really clear. So this is where a lot of people are being tested, and they get ultrasounds and biopsies. And the biopsy involves 12 needles into the prostate, to 12 different quadrants to do that, of which there is risk of infection and bleeding and those kind of things. To do that, and you're having a lot of people in that middle range who are being tested because it's not clear.
Wow. So what other tests would you use for prostate cancer?
We don't have one. As always.
So it's the only one available right now.
That's what we got. So true prevention of cancer, not early detection, which is actually what in epidemiology would be called secondary prevention, is how do you keep it from getting worse. Primary prevention, actually preventing the tumor, comes down to our old friends, diet, lifestyle. Certainly men who have the diabetes, pre-diabetic, have the big gut, that fat tissue in the beer belly promotes inflammation and produces more estrogen. And that seems to be a risk factor in the development of prostate cancer. So again, it's the anti-cancer diet of lots of healthy, fresh produce, keeping closer to ideal body weight, exercise, all the same health things we hear about for everything else. That's how to prevent prostate cancer.
I've heard it said, men, you're going to get it, it's just a matter of time.
Well, that's true, and that's the other issue. So there's no screening currently recommended for men over 70. Because if a prostate cancer that occurs after the age of 70 is much more likely to be one that you will die with rather than from. They won't have the bad mutations that cause it to spread. So yes, if you take men who've reached the age of 90 and you do autopsies when they die, 90-some% of them will have some degree of prostate cells in their cancer. But it's meaningless. If they grow in there, they don't spread, it's not a problem.
All right, breast cancer, it just seems to be almost epidemic.
Well, this is the problem. 1 in 8 women will get breast cancer. And yet, everything that we're doing, it seems, again, what the task force looks at is that mammograms seem to do the best job between ages 60 and 70, women in their 60s. Women in their 40s, there's a high degree of false positives because they are still in reproductive years. The hormone changes that happen with women who are still menstruating will cause the breast tissue to be more difficult to see tumors when they're in there. The tumor is denser. So you get a lot of false positives with a lot of biopsies, and the like. Even between women between 50 and 59, mammograms seem to be a little bit better, but in terms of what they would talk about, what the task force looks at is how many tests do we need to do to save one life? And for women in their 40s, we have to do 1,900 mammograms to save one life. And with women in their 50s, for various reasons, it goes down to 1,300. They make kind of an arbitrary decision to say, well, we don't think it's worthwhile in the 40s, but it seems like we should be doing in the 50s. But even then, at least the studies show that doing them every other year is no worse than doing them every year. So whether women even need a yearly mammogram. There were some newer technologies out there with digital mammograms, with MRIs that are getting more expensive, do seem to detect things better, but they don't feel that there's sufficient evidence right now to say, yes, we really should be doing these.
All right, let me take a break. We'll come back. I want to ask you a couple things. There seems to be, you can do some screening and everything may be normal, but cancer may be there.
Right. That would be called false negatives on the screening exam.
Okay,
right.
And then the other thing is cancer overall just seems to be epidemic.
Well, sure.
And I mean, it's just unbelievable. So anyway, Dr. Joel Klein's with us from Ventana Wellness. If you want to join us, the phone number is 541-776-5368 or toll free. If you're outside the immediate Medford area, 1-800-373-5368. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paulina and I work at theDove TV. Did you know that when you support theDove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
Okay, we're back with Dr. Joel Klein, and he's a physician with Ventana Wellness, and we're talking about the C word, cancer, and cancer screening and types. And as we were going to the break, Dr. Klein, I asked you the question. It just seems that cancer is epidemic. I mean, where was it 100 years ago compared to where it is today?
I can tell you. Actually, people have looked at this, particularly in Victorian era England. This is fascinating. I was listening to a gentleman who studied this, who everyone said, oh, he must be misinformed, till a historian came by and said, no, he's right. And let's say in Victoria era England, late 1800s, the truth is, number one, if you lived past the age of 5, there was a high degree of infant mortality. They lived as long or longer than we do now. It is a myth that we live longer than anybody else has. There was high infant mortality, so overall, people lived not as long if you did a statistical analysis. But once you live past the age of 5, they lived as long or longer. This was the heyday of anatomical pathology when doctors were doing several autopsies a week on people, 2 to 3 a week, and cancer was uncommon. 10% maybe, and they guessed that that was probably the certain amount of genetic cancers that we all hear about, the gene components, maybe comprise 5 to 10% of total cancers. And that's what they were seeing. 10% of patients died from cancer 150 years ago. And less environmental toxins and more produce in the diet.
Okay, so the flip side of that is that's what you think the rise of cancer is all about?
It seems to be. Certainly our pro-inflammatory diets, and certainly to whatever degree the amount of environmental toxins we're being exposed to, 500 new chemicals being introduced into the environment every year is a number that I have heard. And of course, the problem is you have to prove the chemical is dangerous to have it removed. It's the flip side of drugs where you have to prove they're safe. And it's very hard. That's why these people have very tough legal cases to prove that it was that chemical that caused that problem, because we live in this soup. So how do you prove it was that company's one chemical that caused the problem? Can be very difficult.
Is it true? You're the doctor, so I'm just going by rumors, I guess, or thoughts. Is it true that the younger you are, the higher risk for, if you get cancer, the mortality rate's higher if you're younger versus if you're older?
It does seem to hold that way. I don't know the actual statistics, but it seems, again, since cancer is kind of a degenerative disease as well that goes along with aging. Now, we're not talking about the childhood lymphomas and leukemia as a completely different category. But the regular cancers, it seems as though if whatever conditions that led to the development of that cancer, if they were that severe that somebody in their 30s and 40s gets cancer, it's usually much more common for that to be a really bad actor and one that will spread more quickly.
How many types of cancer are there?
Every tissue in the body can develop a cancer, theoretically.
Okay.
So that's the thing. Cancer is not one thing, it's hundreds. You know, overgrowth of cells from any type of tissue. Obviously, we look at all the different organs, connective tissue, nervous system. So there's a huge, variety, and they don't all behave the same way. And that's why to just talk about cancer as a single entity really may not be helpful.
All right, let's go to the phone. Hi, Angie. You're on the air. You're with Dr. Klein.
Good morning. Hi,
Good
Perry
morning.
and Dr. Klein.
Hi.
Hi there. I have a question. I'm wondering what your opinion is of thermography as a tool to detect breast cancer and other cancers.
But the thing about thermography is it's a better functional test. It just has not been studied as well, so we don't have the data on it. My personal experience and with patients is that I think it can be very helpful. And I worked with a thermographer back in Colorado who had gotten so good with her technique and all that she was able to convince one of the breast surgeons in town to be able to do a biopsy solely on the thermography and an ultrasound test without having to do the radiation from mammogram because they felt it was that dependable. It supposedly catches things way before they cause a problem because of blood flow changes and all that. So while we don't have the data on, how good is this in terms of prevention? Is it going to be better than mammograms? Because the people who are going to pay for that huge of a study are not going to look at thermography. I tend to be in favor of it when used with other modalities and really as part of the whole picture.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie. Colon cancer. And of course, the obvious screening for that. Is it effective? Does it work?
Yes. I mean, this is the thing. It's felt. The problem is colon cancer does not fit the model that prostate and breast do. It really does seem like we know how the cancers develop. They develop in these polyps. They take years to grow to a certain size. The treatment of them is relatively benign. If you can catch that polyp on a colonoscopy rather than an invasive surgery, seems to be curative. So the problem is there are some complications with colonoscopy, though they are few, and they are expensive, and we don't have enough gastroenterologists in the country to do colonoscopies on everybody who should. Yeah. So they're still recommending like the fecal blood test, which has a high rate of false positives. You can have blood in your stool from almost anything. Taking a few aspirin, too much vitamin C, other things that are going on hemorrhoids, obviously, or even an ulcer will cause the blood on the stool test. And the sigmoidoscopy, whereas maybe 30 years ago was really good, it turns out, and maybe because we're exposed to higher concentration of toxins. I was taught in medical school that 25% of colon cancer was in reach of the doctor's finger. They were all down there at the bottom, a quarter of them. Mm-hmm. Does not hold true anymore. They're moving more and more over to the right side of the colon where they can only be seen with colonoscopy. So that's one I do tend to favor because it does seem we can get it early enough without too much trauma and complications for the patient.
Well, some insurance companies say it's preventative.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing.
Yeah.
The whole thing for the insurance companies is it cost effective? Yeah. I think it's definitely beneficial, but from their standpoint, are they saving enough money in treating colon cancer patients by getting them early with what you're spending on the colonoscopies?
How often do you recommend?
The recommendation is at age 50. Everyone should get testing. And if it's colonoscopy, you can actually get one every 10 years after that, and really only up till age 70, 75. After 75, no one recommends doing it. If you have polyps, have those types of things found on the colonoscopy, then that needs to be followed up sooner. The other change for that, if you have a first-degree relative, a sibling or a parent who had diagnosed with colon cancer before the age of 60, then you should have it 10 years before the age they were when they were diagnosed. So let's say they were diagnosed at 57, you should have a colonoscopy at 47, not at 50.
Okay. All right. The common treatments is radiation and chemotherapy. Your thoughts on that?
That would be a whole nother show that we could talk about. I think there are people doing some very good work in this area that is just being studied. Even the big experts at the major cancer centers will tell you that still trials that are being done now are not being done with this knowledge that we've had over that. Again, not only do tumors with certain mutations behave in a certain way, they also respond better to certain drugs. That knowledge is not being used. It turns out it matters less whether it's a colon or a breast or a stomach cancer as opposed to what's the genetic mutation driving the tumor, and there's testing that can be done for that, and they just haven't studied that on a large level.
Well, on that subject, Dr. Klein, I've been reading as they begin to study the mutation of the various cells that they can pinpoint a chemo drug that will attack just that.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Exactly. Now, the drug companies will develop certain drugs along those lines. They're doing more of these monoclonal antibodies like Herceptin, but it turns out even the regular chemotherapy drugs, not these newer antibody-directed biological agent drugs, you can determine from there which tumors may respond better.
Do you see the industry going there?
Yes, but at a glacial pace.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Why? Yeah, because it seems to be effective. Okay, bureaucracy.
Bureaucracy and money, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Hi, Bob. You're on the air with Dr. Klein. Go ahead.
Thank you, Perry. Thank you, Dr. Klein. I was wondering if you could make any kind of a comment regarding, you mentioned in general exposure to toxins in the environment. I'm looking at it from a direction of mega farming, monocropping, utilizing a lot of petroleum-based fertilizers, and then picking the food green so that essentially it looks good when it's on the shelf later.
That's part of it, certainly. And then all the industrial chemicals, everything else that's being used. Yes, that's part of this huge load that we've taken, and with industrial farming, commercial farming over the past 50 to 75 years, plus the practice of not allowing fields to go fallow and rotating crops like we've been told from the beginning of time, because the soil needs to recover. So the plants that we have that are supposed to have certain nutrients don't have them anymore because the soil's been depleted. Any and all of it, this is the problem. All of these things together are likely playing a role in how we separate them out, so that because the industry will claim, well, you can't prove this, you can't prove that, because it's all of them are happening at the same time. But instinctively, we know that all of these things are likely causing a problem.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you,
Sure.
Bob. Interesting. Those who have gone through chemo and their immune system is pretty much knocked down at the end, is there something they can do to build that back up? Is there a natural system or course they can do?
Biggest thing after chemotherapy, in my experience, of course, is all the damage to the gastrointestinal tract. And so if we are going to heal from all that, we need to be able to properly digest and assimilate our food.
Right. And
there's no healing, because all the healing of the GI tract that will be done is done with naturopathic means to bring back, replacing, well, of course, they're starting to realize that bacteria in our gut are important. Probiotics. There are all kinds of herbs and supplements that are made for these healing things of the gut to do that, so we can actually properly digest and assimilate our foods. There are a lot of other naturopathic things that can be done for that, and the people that I know who are doing good work are working with really good herbal things for the immune system and all of that. So there's a lot that can be done.
Can they be done simultaneously with chemo?
That is a big controversial question, because the oncologists are concerned that the herbs will interfere with the chemo, when all the data that they have, and now a lot of this is test tube data, shows that the herbs actually help block mechanisms that the tumors use to become resistant to the chemo. So they actually help the chemo if you use them the right way. And the thing about vitamins in chemotherapy, and there's some people who've written some very detailed articles on this, there's almost every study that's been done, with few exceptions, either shows no interference at all or a positive effect from using nutrients with the chemotherapy. The oncologists are still very nervous about, anything that could possibly interfere with the chemo, so they're usually not going to be in favor of that.
All right, let me squeeze in one more question. Hi, Chris, you're on the air with Dr. Klein. Go ahead.
Hello, I just have a question. A friend of mine gave me an article on vitamins that, like multivitamins, vitamin E, C, that there's all this testing that they don't do any good at all. And so I'm just kind of wanted to get your opinion on what you thought about that.
I don't know what you're talking about, so you need to be more specific about what kind of the studies? Yeah, the problem is they do isolated studies, I get it, on vitamin E or vitamin C, and these are isolated types of things, but at least that they do no harm. The problem is they're typically using forms of vitamin E that have never existed in nature, which is the stuff that you can buy very cheap at Costco or Walmart, and vitamin C issues. So the studies are a lot of times being done in ways that aren't likely to show a benefit anyway. So it all depends on how you interpret the studies. There are other studies that will show potential benefit. I don't think just taking them willy-nilly is a good strategy. There are people who are smart doing this, applying this in very specific ways that make a lot of sense. But if you're just going to take a whole bunch of vitamins, yeah, that probably is not going to be very helpful.
But just like a general multi and some ecstasy and
well, that won't help.
D
That won't hurt anybody. But the question is, how much good will it do? I think that's a question, but it certainly can't hurt. I think. But again, we're looking at mega doses of things that the whole question, and this is detail, I have to go into it, that most chemotherapy does not work by an oxidative mechanism, so taking antioxidants actually will not affect it. And that's a whole nother long discussion. We could do a whole nother program on.
This is fascinating, Dr. Klein. I think you touched a real nerve here, because cancer is so much a part of our lives today, and everybody's asking these basic questions about it. And so thanks for your time. Can't wait to get you back in.
All right, I'll be back in a month, and we can pick it up then.
There we go. And Dr. Klein, he's a physician with Ventana Wellness, and if you're looking for a good doc, there's one right there. Thanks for coming in.
Barry.
All right, we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Daniel, and I work at theDove TV. You know, compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market, but at theDove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or by phoning 541-776-5368.
Welcome back. Well, earlier and quite often we talk about Christians who are being persecuted for their faith, and some people have given the ultimate sacrifice for their faith. Well, earlier, our own Steve Johnson had a chance to talk to David Maines. He is the Executive Director of Mainstay Ministries, and they talk about the persecution of Christians in Nigeria. Let's join him now.
Dr. Maines, it's great to be able to have you with us, especially since a lot of our listeners and viewers may be familiar with you being on the Chapel of the Air for several decades, and your 50-day spiritual adventure, which when I read that, I thought, boy, I remember when that was all happening so often every year, and a lot of our listeners and viewers were a part of that. So I want to talk now about kind of the new era that you are in with your ministry and Mainstay Ministries and Nigeria. Now, we've had an individual who's a friend of theDove who's gone over to try to build a Bible school there, so we've heard a little bit about it. But tell us what is happening in Nigeria and how you got involved in that.
Okay, let me give you just a little background on Nigeria, because sometimes people hear the word and don't know where it is. It's West Africa. It's the 7th largest country in the world, which is surprising to people. It's even bigger population-wise than Russia. The biggest city is Lagos, which is right on the sea, and that's about 11 million people. I'm from Chicago, and when I think 11 million, that is really large. The country speaks English, so it's relatively easy to get around in Nigeria, at least in the southern part. When you go into the north, you get into some tribal languages, which is the area where I went to. You have to understand Nigeria as being about 50-50 Christian, Muslim, and they have lived together for many years. The north is more Muslim, the south is more Christian. Recently, a group called Boko Haram, which is a militant Muslim group, has said they would like to make the northern part, and they demand that they make the northern part of Nigeria under Sharia law, and they have said all people who don't convert or agree, you need to go or we will kill you, and they have been true to their word. So there have been about 2,000 now recorded Christian deaths, and those are not quiet deaths, those are shot or slaughtered. I was there in Nigeria in November. Just about a month before that, there were 26 students pulled out of a given university in the north. They were brought out. They were all Christian. If you listen to BBC, CNN, they talk about what happens, but they don't say these are all Christians necessarily. And each one of them was shot in the head or their throats were cut. So it is a grisly thing that is going on. Two ways you have to understand what is there to get a picture of it in your mind. One is that churches are attacked. Quite often, it's done during worship services. They are set on fire as people flee. They are shot. There'll be 40, 50 of these Boko Haram people there who will try to kill them. Churches, they're not large churches. Churches have tried to post guards, sometimes 2-3 guards, but they're just shot quickly, overcome, and then the work is done. Then they also go into villages. Sometimes they're Christian villages. Sometimes if you get a little bit larger, it's a mixed group of Muslim Christian. And these people, again, they've lived together, but they will go in and just begin to pick out the Christian homes and kill these people, shoot them. when I heard this first from Dio Obawiya, who is the director for medical ambassadors for 17 countries, he lives in Nigeria, I said, I can't imagine what you're talking about, Dio. I had never heard of any of these things. And when he talked more, I said, this has to be made aware to the churches in North America what is going on, so people can pray and they can give to these people who have lost everything. And somewhere we got to get this recorded more. Well, my background, as you've said, is radio and television. I won awards in that area, and I kind of pushed the board of medical ambassadors, and eventually it ended up with me going over. And I'm 76 years old, which is pretty old to make not only the trip, but go up into some of those areas. Fortunately, it was not scary for me at all, but we were able to bring to where we were survivors of what has happened, and then record their stories in a documentary. For example, I'm thinking of one pastor, his name was Pastor John. When they came into his village, he heard the gunshots, he called to his family, he had 6 kids, and then his wife, and for whatever reason, they ran to the house, and he tried to get them to come with him. They run to the bush and hide, and they didn't. They stayed in the house, and when the Boko Haram came, they knew they were in the house. They just poured gasoline around the house. When I say house, it's not like my house or your house probably. It's kind of in between a hut and our houses. And they just poured gasoline around, set him on fire, and he lost all of his family. And he came, it took him 2 days to get to where we were so we could record his testimony. And he gave it a very, he doesn't speak English well, but he gave it in English. And when he was all done, I said, thank you. He just touched me deeply. And I said, thank you so much. And he said, no, I thank you. I said, why would you thank me after all you've gone through? He said, nobody knows, and you're listening to me tell my story. And so that's what I did. I recorded the stories of these people, then I tried to weave it around the ministry of Dio Obawiya, who again is just a prince of a man, and he has been in a position that's very difficult because he's received death threats. And he knows, and when I talk to him, he says, I maybe have 3 years to live if I'm fortunate, but my life is in the hands of the Lord and such. So that's the background. Does that help you?
Yeah, it does. So your interest in this really came just by finding out there was a problem and investigating it a little bit further. Is that right?
Finding out there's a problem and a very dear personal friend involved. Because Dio has a family, a wife, and you know, I'm concerned for him, and I wanted to pray for him. I pray for him every day, and I think having been there, I can pray far more intelligently. And then also these people whose lives have been absolutely shattered. I mean, this pastor lost his kids, he lost his wife, he lost his home, he lost his clothes, he lost his job, he lost his property, he lost everything. And what does he do? He wanders until he finds someone who can be of help to him, which is the role that Dio is in. But he has so many of these people now. He says, wow, how do I care for them all? I give them clothes, I give them food that I have, I give them money. I don't have a lot of money. And he says, somewhere the church in other parts of the world has to know what's going on and come to our help, because we need you desperately now. So that's what motivated me.
How long was your interview on camera with Dio Obawiya?
We interviewed, there was an enclosed compound. There's a certain danger once you come with cameras and such. I went in with just one videographer and one sound man, and smaller cameras. There were places in the documentary we've done that I didn't get to, but some incredibly brave Nigerian videographers went there and got footage for us. The whole of when I interviewed him took it was late in the afternoon when we did that. It was easy to do because I know him very well, and I said, I don't just want to do a video of statistics and dead bodies. You know, I need somehow for people to identify with a given person so that they can say, these are real people like us, and these are attractive people. So he became the dominant personality in the interview, but at the same time, there were other interviewees who came in from different places that we met.
What I'd like to do is air just a brief clip of this interview that took place so you kind of get a feel. So here's Dr. David Maines talking to Dio Obawiya at that compound that is fairly dangerous. This is just about a 1.5-minute clip. Let's air that.
You never thought about violence against Christians when you committed your life to Christ or when you became a leader in the cause of Christ. Would you like to go back and say, if I had known this, I wouldn't have followed you, Jesus?
Well, this is the first time that we are facing this violence in this dimension. This is a huge one. And if I had known that this kind of problem would be there before I became a Christian, I would have had a second thought, especially when I look at the response of the church to the present state of situation. I think I would reconsider being a Christian. But now that I'm a Christian, I think it's a price that we have to pay to defend our faith. The people that preach to me never talk to me about violence, but looking through the scriptures now, looking at the way the disciples were martyred, and looking at the experience of our Lord Jesus Christ, I think it's a price that is worth paying. Now I've come to live with the reality that I really have to count the costs, and I really have to carry my cross and follow. And so these things that are happening is a confirmation of the predictions in the scriptures and things that have been happening. But I have a hope, and the hope is that I'll see the Lord after paying this price. So I think it's worth it.
You know, that is just a snapshot of a pretty telling interview you had there. You can certainly grasp the feeling that he has of saying, there's danger all around here, here's where my faith lies. What is going to be done with all these interviews to alert people to the problems in Nigeria that we just heard?
Well, I'm hoping that people will get a copy of the DVD. They can do that by going to medicalambassadors.org. That's the homepage, medicalambassadors.org, and then if they click on the Nigerian thing, it tells them how they can get a free DVD. And I'm hoping that people will not only watch it, but they will say to their Sunday school class or their small group or their missional community or their men's group or women's group, whatever, watch this with me. And what I want people to do is to be generous with these people who have lost everything. And then I also want them to pray for what's going on in Nigeria. And I tried in that interview, I don't know if you've seen it all, Steve, or not, but I tried in that interview to help people know how to pray, not only for those who are persecuted, but for the persecutors as well. Because I don't want to make this a Muslim-Christian fighting type of thing. They've been together in Nigeria many years. It's an unfortunate thing, but the truth is that God loves those militants as much as he loves you or he loves me. And so we have to pray for them as well. And God's doing a work in a lot of those people's lives, the dreams and visions that people are having, and they're affected by what they're doing. So I'm just praying that the evil will turn into good because of the rallying of God's people around the country.
What is the next step for you? Are you going to be going back to Nigeria, do you think?
I don't think I'll be allowed to go back in again, especially if the video gets wide exposure. Dio was kind of in a difficult position because the more exposure he gets, the more his life is in danger. Did you see Zero Dark 30, the film that was up for Academy Award?
Yeah, I know about it, sure.
Okay, well, in that, Jessica Chastain, she plays the role of the woman who finds out where Osama bin Laden is. And at the end of that film, two men try to assassinate her when she drives out of her compound in Pakistan, and they just unload with automatic rifles at her. Now, there was bulletproof glass in the car and the reinforced steel, and she jams it in reverse and goes back in, puts the garage door down, and so she's saved. But as soon as that happens, the State Department says, you come back home. You have to leave Pakistan and come back to Washington, D.C., because once you're on the hit list, the only way you get off is that you get killed. Well, if you can understand that from the secular video that was done, which is the reality the United States government knows in terms of militant Muslim groups, that's the position Dio is in. So as you watch him, he is a marked, I have a hard time saying it because I care deeply for him.
Yeah.
He's a marked man. And he's staying there with his family and with his wife. And so he's in a difficult spot, very difficult spot, and as are all Christians. Your heart goes out when you watch it. You see the testimony. Some of them are very simple farm people talk about what has happened up in the north. But yeah, it's a tough road. It's not the only place where Christians are in danger serving the Lord. The whole of Medical Ambassadors, there are 4 or 5 of these different huge regional leaders who are in the very same situation. Yeah. And what they say is this is the start of what is going to happen all around the world. We're the first fruits of the martyrs. And
wow.
That may be true, who knows?
Well, I'll tell you what, this is a great, for people who are just getting introduced to this for the first time, this is a great beginning to see that video. And medicalambassadors.org, the place they can go, right?
Yes, right.
Dr. Maines, thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for giving me the time.
Wow, what an incredible story, and that continues to go on every day, so pray for them there in Nigeria. Well, coming up next, have you thought about sending your kids to a Christian school? Why? We'll tell you coming up in just a few moments.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at theDove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on theDove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
Well, we're back, and I'm delighted to have in the studio with us today Tim Teterud. He is the principal of Grace Christian Schools, and I tell you what, if you ever thought about sending your children to a Christian school, here's a great opportunity for you to find out more about it. And Tim, nice to have you with us.
Thank you. Good to be here.
You got a series of open houses coming up, and this is a great opportunity for parents to check it all out, right?
It is. Right. Starting this Friday, Perry, at 8:30. February 7th at Grace, we're going to have open house, and parents can come and just spend time on our campus.
And see what's going on?
Seeing what's going on.
And Grace goes from what grade to what grade?
We start a 3-year-old preschool, and we go all the way through 8th grade.
Wow. And you've been doing it for quite a while.
Yeah, I have been at Grace for 14 years, yeah.
14 years. Now, this begins a series of open houses. Is that right, Tim?
It does, yeah. There's a number, I think it's on our website, of all the different open houses, both for Grace and Cascade. I know Cascade just had a big one last week, and this is our first big one for this week, and then we'll continue on through.
Why should parents consider Christian education?
Well, I think the most important thing, Perry, is our mission. We're here to partner with parents for a Christ-centered biblical worldview education, and we believe it's the parents' responsibility to train children, and we just want to come alongside of them. So parents that desire a biblical-based education for their children, that's what they would want to come to Grace for.
Well, you've been doing it for a long time. You received a lot of accolades for what you do. The quality there is second to none, and it really is just an amazing, the stories that we're hearing come from families and students. I'm always amazed, especially around graduation time, we hear all those great things. But some parents will say, I can't afford it, or it's inconvenient. What would you say?
We would encourage them to look into financial assistance. We have a needs-based financial assistance program that they can also on our website get on through fax, and you work through them, and then they make a decision what the need would be, and then we can do that. And I think we gave probably over $400,000 of needs-based financial assistance this past year to families.
How does that work, Tim?
How that works is we have one of our big fundraisers works with that, the Gifts of Grace at Christmas time. People that donate for that's one of the things. Then we do budget some of our money for that, and just gifts from people. As parents then apply for that, then we look to see if they qualify for that, and then they can get help through their tuition.
All right, now you say a Christian worldview. How is that applied in the classroom?
We look at our curriculum, and not all of our curriculum is Christ-based curriculum. It's some of it is secular, but we take that and we look at how do we teach this through the sieve of a Bible worldview, biblical worldview. So our teachers spend a lot of time in their in-services and in their training together and working together to find out how can we present this information, the material, in a way that would integrate that biblical worldview, whether it's through our academic settings or also in like our outdoor recess times, those types of things. We've got some interesting curriculum that work with peacemakers, and this is a day and age of bullying and those types of things. And so we talk a lot about how do we biblically get along with each other, how do we resolve conflict with one another. So we take the students right to the Bible and show them how to biblically do that.
I was going to ask you that because bullying is a big thing today, and you're obviously are dealing with it right up front, proactive on it.
We do, right? We take the kids right to the Scripture and talk with them about what would Jesus do? How does He instruct us to get along? Because we're all sinful beings and it's hard to get along with one another. So we take those kids and we help them to learn how to biblically do that.
Scripture memorization, obviously a key part of your curriculum.
Very key, yeah, Perry. We have everybody memorizes Scripture once a week, some kind of a verse that there again goes along with their Bible curriculum, And some of our students, I know, in one of our pre-kindergarten classes, they actually learn passages. Those little 4-year-olds will stand up and tell you the 23rd Psalm, or they're learning a passage now in Proverbs, and they have it with their actions and pretty animated. So,
well, listen, Grace has been around long enough, and so has Cascade High School been around long enough that you're getting the students coming back and making comment of what that time of their life meant to them. Maybe you can share one or two with us.
It is. Well, and the other exciting thing is some of our students are coming back and actually teaching for us, and that's been an exciting thing. In my own life, I have 3 daughters who went through the system, and my oldest daughter ended up coming back after graduating, getting her teaching degree, coming back and teaching in our middle school for 4 years, and was pretty excited about that.
Wow.
We've got currently some practicum students. Matter of fact, when I started there 14 years ago, one of my students in 6th grade, he's coming back and working through RCC and in education and spending time in our classroom with the practicum, that type of a thing.
Well, there you go. All right, let me just say, what's in the future for the school? Where are you guys going in the future?
In the future for the school, we just want to partner with parents and encourage parents to look at a Christ-based education. We're always looking at growth with our students academically, spiritually, that type of a thing. Numerically, it's good if we grow. We've got room to grow, so we want lots of people to come out. We've got openings in all of our classrooms.
Okay. All right, let me just say again, the first of series of open house will be this Friday. It'll be the first one. And that'll start when, Tim? At 8:30 in the morning?
8:30 in the morning.
All day long?
All day long. We have chapel that day. We've got a great chapel where our 8th grade students, our mission is to encourage kids in the area of leadership. So we have 8th grade students actually lead our worship team. And they can come to chapel. They can explore, look in the classrooms, come and look at our curriculum, look at our co-curricular activities, just experience, the advantage that we give them.
And this is going to be a series of open house through the spring months as well, so that you can familiarize yourself with the school, and all the way from, what did you say,
preschool, 3-year-old?
Preschool, yeah, all the way up through high school. So this one's coming up Friday, and then you have February 18th, and then in March you have a couple more. And I might add, Cascade's going to have a couple of more as well. The Cascade Christian High School, February 18th, March 4th, March 18th, and even into April and May, where you can check out the school and the curriculum there. And I just want to encourage you, what has happened through Grace Christian Schools has really been amazing. It just has been amazing. I mean, you've gone on, you've won awards, you've got scholastic awards, you've got athletic awards. I mean, it's just been amazing, hasn't it?
We just held our district spelling bee every year. We hold the ACSI district spelling bee, and we've had 2 of our Grace Christian students go all the way to nationals, one to Washington, D.C., and one to Dallas, Texas this last year. And so we just held that on Friday, and that was a great opportunity for the students.
The other part about this, Tim, is the commitment of your teachers. It's just amazing what they do and how they prepare and what they sacrifice to be there.
It is. We have an excellent staff. They come to us needing to have a real strong relationship with Jesus, and they love Jesus and they love kids, and that's what really counts. And then they work for us for much less than what they could get in our government schools. Yeah. But their commitment is to the Lord and to minister to kids. And I see that as teachers stay after school to help kids. In the middle school, I'll walk through my hallways and see teachers at lunchtime having kids in their rooms, helping them with math and just wanting them to succeed. And we've got a very dedicated, committed staff.
All right, so what would you say to the parents that's thinking, yeah, I maybe should look into this? And you're talking about come now for next year.
Absolutely.
But what would you say to the parents that say, I really want this? What would be the benefit of them coming to the open house?
I think the benefit of coming to an open house is you see who we are. We don't put on anything different. We just see who we are. And I go back to that scripture that says, when a student is not above his teacher, but everyone who is fully trained will be like his teacher. And I think that's the most important part, even in my personal life with our own children, is realize that they've been affected and impacted by Christian teachers.
Well, you're a delight, and thank you for what you guys do over there.
Thank you very much.
You guys are really a blessing to the community and to so many families. So let me encourage you to check it out. The first one will be coming up Friday. Just run on by there at Grace Christian Schools, located behind First Baptist Church there in Medford. And from 8:30 on, you can come, go in the classroom, check it all out, go to the chapel, and see what's going on and ask all the questions. So again, thanks, Tim.
Thank you very much, Perry.
All right, we'll see you next time on Focus Today.
Hi, I'm Jim and I work at theDove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, theDove.us.